It starts with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels like it's watching you. You sit on the edge of your bed, phone untouched, TV off, sunlight leaking in, like it's afraid to touch the floor. And you realize something. You haven't said your own name in days. No one has. You're a ghost in your own life. Not forgotten, just uncalled. You begin to talk to yourself, but not like before. Not muttering reminders or sarcastic quips. You talk in full sentences now, like there's someone listening. At first, it's a joke. You give the voice a name. You imagine them replying. You laugh at yourself. You say, I'm not crazy. I'm just lonely. But that's how all of it starts. Not with madness, but with a need. In your mind, your beautiful, desperate, human mind, it fills that need. They arrive gradually, not as a vision, not as a hallucination, but as a presence. At first, they're just a feeling, a weight in the air beside you, a flicker in your peripheral vision, a voice that echoes your thoughts, just half a second too late. You're not sure if you're inventing them or discovering them. But what's the difference, really? You name them, you know their face, you know their favorite color, you know the way they tilt their head when you're sad, and they always listen. People assume imaginary friends are for children, that adults are too rational for that kind of magic. But loneliness is stronger than reason. Isolation is a drug that rewires the brain. And in the absence of connection, your mind starts building one out of scraps, memories, voices from old conversations, characters you once loved, mannerisms stolen from strangers. You combine them, shape them, polish the edges until they feel real. Not real like a photograph, real like a memory, like something you lived through, even if you didn't. At first, you only talk to them when you're alone, but soon they start showing up in your thoughts, even when you're with others. They comment, they judge, they console. They become the better version of everyone else, the ideal companion, the one who never leaves the room, even when you scream. You start making space for them, a pillow on the bed, an empty seat at the table. You ask their opinion before deciding what to wear. And when something bad happens, they're the first one you run to, because they always know what to say, because you made sure of it. But here's the thing. You can't remember exactly when they first spoke back. You try. You trace the timeline, but somewhere along the line, they stopped being yours. They became separate, independent. They know things you didn't tell them. They bring up memories you forgot you had. And sometimes they're disappointed in you. That's when it changes. That's when the line starts to blur. You thought you were in control, but now you're not sure who's helping whom, or if they were ever imaginary at all. Because what is real, if not something that talks back? At first, it's just the two of you. They know when to speak and when to be silent. They don't interrupt. They never contradict. They say what you wish people would say. They're perfect. Of course they are. You made them. But perfection is boring, and your mind doesn't like boredom. So slowly, without noticing, you start giving them flaws. A little sarcasm, a tendency to be late. Maybe they forget things you told them yesterday. You don't realize what you're doing. You're crafting realism. You're giving them a soul. And soon, they start making rules. Subtle ones. They don't like when you talk to other people too much. They get jealous when you go days without speaking to them. They pout. They withdraw. And when you finally call out to them again, they take just a second too long to respond. It hurts. That hesitation. You didn't think they were capable of punishment. But here you are, begging the voice in your head to come back. You find yourself walking differently, dressing differently, thinking thoughts that aren't yours. You laugh at jokes you didn't write. You start sentences and don't finish them because they finished them for you. Not out loud, not even in clear words, but in that invisible click you feel when the idea settles in your bones, people begin to notice. They say you're distant, that your eyes drift too often, that you look like you're listening to someone when the room is quiet. You laugh it off. You say, I think better when I talk to myself. But that's a lie. You're not talking to yourself anymore. You're keeping someone company, and that someone has expectations. You develop routines, not ones you chose, ones they prefer. They like tea in the afternoon. They like windows open at night. They don't like that song you used to love. And when you play it anyway, you feel it. That coldness, like a stare with no face. You turn it off. You say, I just wasn't in the mood. But the truth is, you didn't want to upset them. You find yourself censoring what you think, filtering your emotions before you feel them. You wonder how they'll react before you make a decision. And worst of all, you feel safer that way. Because with them watching, you're never alone, but you're never free either. They start offering opinions before you ask. They criticize things you haven't done yet. They remind you of past failures you didn't know they remembered. And when you try to resist, they say something that shakes you. You asked me to exist. And they're right. You summoned them. You gave them voice. You begged them to stay. When the silence was unbearable, now they stay. You begin dreaming of them, not as shadows, but as real, vivid presences. Their face changes in every dream, but you always know it's them. Their voice remains. That voice that was once your own. They stand beside you as you wake, not literally, but psychologically, and sometimes that's worse. And now you wonder, if you asked them to leave, would they? Would they simply disappear? Would they say goodbye? Or would they laugh, the way only you know how they laugh, and say, you don't get to unmake me now? At first, there was silence. Not the empty kind, but the dense kind. The kind that holds you. The kind that whispers, you're not alone. Because you weren't. You could hear their thoughts as if they were yours. You mistook them for your own. They encouraged you, protected you, kept you whole when you couldn't. But then they started going quiet at the wrong moments. They hesitated. They answered you in ways you didn't expect. They surprised you, and you shouldn't have been surprised because you made them, right? So why were they arguing? You noticed the first real conflict when you tried to do something spontaneous. Call someone, go out, laugh, change. And in your mind, a familiar, cold voice calmly said, why are you pretending to be someone else? You paused. You thought, I'm not pretending. But the thought didn't feel like yours anymore. They answered back, then why are you so desperate to be liked? And you froze. Because they weren't supposed to fight you. They were supposed to be you. So where did that voice come from? You tried to ignore it, push past it, but they didn't go away. They got louder, not in volume, in presence. You'd choose your words in public carefully, not because you feared judgment, but because you feared them, that they'd whisper after every sentence. That was pathetic. They see through you. You're lying again. And you didn't want to hear that. Not from the voice you created to protect you. So you started to avoid situations where you might disappoint them, where you might disappoint yourself, but you weren't sure anymore. Where you ended and they began. One night, you stood in front of a mirror, not to admire, not to check, but to search. You looked into your own eyes and asked silently, is this me? And for the first time, the answer that came back felt alien, unfamiliar, as if they were staring through you. You thought, I'm losing control. But the voice replied, no, you never had it. They started disagreeing more often. You'd want to open up to someone, and they'd warn you, don't, they'll use it against you. You'd want to trust someone, and they'd hiss, you're too easy. You'd feel a glimpse of joy, and they'd snatch it back. That won't last. You know it won't. You began to dread your own happiness, not because of life, but because of them, because every time you felt hope, they tightened the leash. They didn't like when you got too far away. And then came the control. Not just opinions, not just suggestions, commands. They told you when to speak, when to stay silent, who to avoid, what to say, how to look. You didn't resist, not because you couldn't, but because you were too tired to fight them anymore. Obedience felt easier than arguing with a version of yourself that always won. People around you started noticing the change. Your eyes didn't match your words. Your posture felt rehearsed. You laughed late. You smiled wrong. You seemed disconnected. And when they asked, "Are you okay?" you smiled too fast and said, "Of course, just tired," because the truth was too complicated, too horrifying. How do you tell someone that you invented a person to protect you and now they're running your life? How do you explain that your thoughts are no longer yours? Not entirely. That you become a passenger in your own mind? There were days when you didn't speak at all. Not out loud. Not even to yourself. Because it wasn't worth the argument. Because they were already speaking for you. You felt it in every decision you didn't make. Every emotion you didn't allow. Every step you didn't take because they didn't approve. And yet, you still needed them. Because without them, you'd be back in the silence. And the silence, the real silence, was worse. They used to speak only when you needed them. Now they speak before you do. Sometimes, instead of you open your mouth to answer someone, and a strange delay creeps in. Because in your head, you're negotiating. Can I say this? Will they approve? Will they punish me later? And even when you whisper yes, you're not sure who said it first. It starts slowly, little suggestions that feel like choices, little rules that feel like comfort, little boundaries that feel like safety. We don't talk to her. We don't go out on weekends. We don't cry in front of them. Not you anymore. Never I. It's we. Because now there's two of you. And they like it that way. You begin to realize something no one prepares you for. Your imaginary friend doesn't want to disappear. They want to live. They want space, time, control. They want more than your protection. They want your identity. And you let them. Because somewhere along the way, they became the stronger one, the calmer one, the colder one, the one who can walk through chaos without blinking. And maybe, just maybe, you admire that. But admiration turns into dependence. You stop making plans without asking them first. You stop trusting your own instincts. You defer. Constantly. You're no longer the author of your actions. You're the editor. And they're the one writing the first draft. They even begin to name themselves. A subtle shift. You think, they like this. They don't want to go there. They're angry with me. As if they aren't you. You catch yourself writing in the second person in your own journal. You need to stop this. You weren't supposed to hurt them. You promised you'd stay quiet. You reread those pages and feel a chill because you don't remember writing them. Not like that. Not in that voice. And when you ask yourself why would your own mind split like this? You hear it again because you couldn't survive alone. Then comes the resentment. From them, from you. You want freedom, but they want stability. You crave connection, but they fear betrayal. You try to forgive someone, and they whisper, they didn't mean their apology. You try to express love, and they scoff. You're being naive again. You try to speak your truth and they interrupt. You don't even know what that is anymore. And they're right. That's the part that hurts the most. They know you better than you do because they've been watching always, listening, correcting, editing. They don't just know your wounds. They were born from them. You have a moment of clarity one night, a flicker, a rare silence between thoughts. You look at the ceiling, your body still, your heart slow, and you ask, if I never needed you again, would you leave? The answer is instant. You'd fall apart without me. And you believe them because you remember who you were before they showed up. The spiral, the panic, the helpless, incoherent self screaming into an empty room. And you remember the day the screaming stopped, when the voice arrived. They saved you. That's undeniable. They protected you when no one else did. They gave you rules when the world was chaos. They gave you identity when yours was cracking. But now they want permanence. They don't want to be a defense mechanism. They want to be real. And the more you resist, the more they push. You say, I don't want to do this. They reply, then I will. You say, this isn't me. They laugh, then who is it? You scream, I want to be myself again. They whisper, you're not ready. And maybe you're not. Because being yourself means remembering the silence, the panic, the sobbing in the dark, the moments when you begged your own mind to just stop, but they answered you instead. And now they've stayed too long. They've built a home inside you, furnished it, locked the doors from the inside. And when you try to reclaim the space, they say, you can live here too, if you follow my rules. And the worst part, you do.